Yo, YouTube. What does it mean to be cool? I've thought about this quite a bit, especially this summer. I planned a few videos around this subject that I wanted to make, but I ended up getting distracted, and I haven't made any of the videos that I planned to make while on my trip. I've pretty much every night I make a Word document and I kind of just write down my thoughts, or I add to other trains of thought I've had recently, and I'm kind of just developing these ideas nightly. And I've been kind of thinking about this in particular a lot lately, and I really wanted to talk about it. So I've kind of tried to organize a whole bunch of ideas that I'm going to try to present in this video. And I really think I've developed these ideas as far as they are going to be developed, so I might as well present them and see what people think, and maybe I can add to them or explain certain aspects of this idea that aren't quite clear enough. But it's a pretty interesting idea, I think. What does it mean to be cool? Well, to me, being cool is just doing things your own way and not being overly concerned about what people think of you. You are cool if you're your own person, if people can't manipulate you and bend you to their way of doing things. I mean, for me, the cool people in history were the radical and innovative philosophers, the ones who challenged the establishment and evolved the artistic scene. The punks of whatever generation. Like, if we look at punk music, when punk music first came out, it was very abrasive to the rest of the society. It was very unacceptable. It was very different, and people didn't like it at all. And it grew, and it grew, and it grew, but then eventually the punk scene ran into the same problem that the original scene ran into. Eventually the punk scene got socially acceptable. And as soon as the punk scene got socially acceptable, there was this flood of people that just jumped on the bandwagon to become punks because all of a sudden it was cool. You know what I mean? It was the cool thing to do. It was no longer full of these people who were passionate about the music and the lifestyle and about wanting to live their own way and doing things their own way. All of a sudden the scene was filled with people who were all about doing things the punk way. Because, like, the punk image had developed. The punk image had developed so much that it had been refined, so that people could know what it meant to be a punk. And then if people weren't acting like what it meant to be a punk, all of a sudden they were beneath punks in the punk's eyes. It's like society always develops to this point where they are very elitist and closed-minded about anything else outside of their perception of what is good and bad. Societies, I think, if they don't have to deal with anything that's very different, they become very closed-minded over time and become very elitist. And if people want to do things differently, like exist outside of the box, then they are chastised. They are said that they are wrong. They can't do things that way. You know, I mean, it's a very elitist mentality, and the people who want to be their own people and do things their own way, they resent the establishment for that. And then eventually, the people who want to do things their own way, they develop a movement, and they start going, and they get support, and they progress so far that they are an accepted part of the community at that point. You know what I mean? And when they are an accepted part of the community, then many of the people that are part of that community are just as elitist and just as closed-minded as anyone else. Like, it seems like at the beginning of these movements, it's always great. Like, these innovative artists, they want to explore the taboo area. They don't want to be held back by society's limited perceptions of what is good and bad. They don't want to be held back by society's image. And so they are their own person, and they develop this whole new world of expression and artistic or philosophy or whatever. They develop this whole new world. And when this radical group of people, when it's fairly small, then it's usually pretty good, because the people they very much believe in what they're doing. They're very passionate of what they're doing. They're only doing what they're doing because they don't care about society's image, and they're just trying to be themselves, which includes following this particular small group. But after a while, I mean, after exploring all of this new territory, they look back on anyone who hasn't chosen to follow them in their same lifestyle choices, and they look down on them. It's like most people that are cool, or most people who think they're cool, their way of thinking is fundamentally the same as the people they're rebelling against. It's like if crossing some random fence was socially taboo for whatever reason. And people just hated those who crossed that fence, even though crossing the fence had no negative effects on anyone else ever. But then, when people do cross the fence, they end up adopting the same elitist mentality towards those who didn't cross the fence. And I'm not trying to imply that things like the punk scene today is completely filled with people who are just fascinated with the punk scene and want to be a punk because it's cool to be a punk. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm just saying there are much more people today that are obsessed with being a punk because the image of being a punk is cool in our society. I feel sorry for the people who actually are an individual and are being themselves and are also punks, and then they go to the shows and they go hang out with the crowds and they're surrounded by a bunch of idiots that they have nothing in common with. A bunch of idiots that look down on anyone who isn't fitting their exact image of what it means to be a punk, which totally defeats what it means to be a punk, in my opinion. Like, I love punk. I go to lots of shows. I like certain types of punk in particular, like ska or whatever, with extra themes added. But I mean, I see that all the time. I mean, like, no more than I see it anywhere else in society. Like, if anything, usually punks are pretty cool people who I get along with a lot more than anyone else. But, like, there's so many idiots who think that if you spike your hair and, throw a chair at a wall, then all of a sudden you're cool. Like, no. So I can really confidently say that I do not think that being cool is about liking a certain type of music or living a certain type of lifestyle or anything like that. That is not what it means to be cool. Because obviously there are huge assholes and complete idiots in every area of life, so... And I mean, there's nothing wrong with having a opinion about different types of music. Obviously, I have opinions about certain types of music, certain types of art, certain types of ways to live, lifestyles. I have opinions about them, obviously. But I think the problem comes in when people start making these broad, sweeping judgments about reality, like, this is good and this is all bad, like that sort of thing. Like, just seeing the world in complete black and white, good and bad, because you don't see any of the nuances at play. You whitewash the situation. You get into this very elitist thinking, and with the elitist thinking comes very closed-mindedness. And it's not like you can be an elitist and not an elitist, or closed-minded and not closed-minded. It's not just yes or no. It's a sliding scale. You're an elitist to certain degrees. Everyone is an elitist. Everyone. It's inescapable. Everyone is closed-minded to a point. So I don't think, like, being an elitist or being closed-minded disqualifies you from being cool or anything like that. No, I just think that, elitists, closed-minded people that aren't willing to accept other people's way of life, these are the closed-minded assholes that cool people were rebelling against in the first place. These closed-minded assholes who are completely disgusted by anything outside their narrow perspective of good. This is, of course, the most extreme side of the spectrum, when people are just so close-minded that they can't accept anything outside of, their little, this is decent way to act, and this is all terrible, all that stuff. And it's a sliding scale down to complete open-mindedness. And, like, elitism is very necessary. I believe it's closely related to egoism, which is obviously very good. Confidence. With egoism comes confidence, and confidence is the most important thing for any type of mental movement. It's like the fuel for any type of mental movement. Like, without confidence, you are just immobilized in self-deprecating apathy. You don't care about anything. You don't move. You move, but you don't explore. You don't change. You don't grow. So confidence and egoism are, I think, very important. And those are kind of tied towards elitism, in a sense. To be able to navigate or even comprehend reality, it is entirely necessary that you make certain assumptions about the nature of reality. If we didn't make assumptions about the nature of reality, then we'd never have the courage to do anything. We'd never have the courage to walk out our front door, because if we don't assume that the world outside our front door is not going to kill us, then we're going to be pretty, jittery and nervous. And, like, if we're constantly considering all the options of what could happen, like, right now a lion could jump through my front door, or, like, a meteor could come through my window, okay? But if we don't make assumptions that those things aren't going to happen, because the likelihood is very low, then we can't really do anything. We have to make certain assumptions about the nature of reality, and it's like the more assumptions we make, the more closed-minded we become, and the more, hardwired for one reality we are. I mean, your brain naturally builds assumptions about reality. It maps reality onto the brain, and this allows complex trains of thought or complex actions to be programmed onto the brain. So we make assumptions about reality to more easily and more effectively navigate reality. And the more you believe that you understand the nature of the world, the more you are closed-minded. The more you map every aspect about the world, like you say, okay, this is the way it is in every aspect of the world, and you're completely confident, then the more closed-minded you are. But the more effectively you are able to navigate that reality, assuming that, your perception of it is true.